Imagine just dropping straight into the dark, cinematic chaos of a human mind. No prologue, absolutely no safety net, just boom, an immediate plunge right into visceral, suffocating darkness. Well, in today's explainer, that's exactly what we're doing. We're embarking on this thrilling internal hero's journey as we decode a truly remarkable piece of writing. It's called Psychothriller in the Head. And trust me, it completely lives up to its name. It's a profound exploration of this intense, chaotic internal battle, a battle that moves from debilitating darkness all the way toward a desperately sought-after light. The opening lines of this poem, they just hit you with this immediate sense of claustrophobia. Listen to this. A psychothriller in the head constantly chokes me. Demonic forces suffocate, tearing down the light in me. I mean, wow, right? The author isn't just describing, having a bad day. He's painting a vivid picture of an active, aggressive mental assault. The language here literally simulates a jagged, suffocating darkness. It's exactly that feeling when anxiety or despair isn't just this lingering sadness, but an actual physical weight, like an active force trying to just completely extinguish your inner light. It's an incredibly intense way to kick off a poem. Okay, let's dive into this. To really grasp the gravity of this internal thriller, we kind of have to look at the architect behind the words. Meet Milan Sofronić. Now, you might completely expect a poem this dark to come from, say, a horror novelist, right? But understanding his specific background provides the absolute crucial twist to grasping the spiritual depth of this thriller, because he isn't writing fiction for entertainment, not at all. He's actually writing from a deeply grounded theological perspective. So tracing Sofronić's background reveals a life that is entirely steeped in spiritual education. Born in 1978 in Loznica, Serbia, his path took him through some seriously rigorous religious schooling. He studied at the Serbian Orthodox Seminary in Sremski Karlovaj, and later on he attended the Orthodox Theological Faculty in Belgrade. And today, he actually works as a religious teacher. So because of this lifelong immersion in theology, you realize the demons he writes about aren't just, poetic metaphors for a bad mood. They represent a very real spiritual warfare. He essentially takes the intense emotional struggles that we all feel and elevates them into a profound battle for the human soul. As we journey deeper into the chaotic mind mapped out in this poem, we really start to see the anatomy of these dark thoughts. By giving these struggles terms like demonic forces, Sofronić connects his highly educated theological framework to something that is a completely universal human experience. I mean, whether you call it demons, extreme anxiety, or just debilitating negative self-talk, the mechanics of the breakdown are exactly the same. The poem maps out step by step exactly how this darkness operates once it gets inside your head. Now, what's really interesting about this slide is how the poem meticulously catalogs the enemy's battle plan. These aren't passive feelings we're talking about. They are active tactics. The text tells us these forces are literally choking and suffocating the mind. They actively tear down the inner light. They use vicious, ugly manipulation to create this miserable state. They rage inside the head, doing absolutely everything they can to cause a complete breakdown. And perhaps most devastatingly for a theologian, they trample on spiritual buildings, which basically means they attack the very foundation of faith and morality that a person has spent their entire life constructing. It's just a total physical and emotional toll. But right in the middle of this massive assault, Sofronić introduces a vital realization. When you're stuck in the middle of an anxiety spiral, those dark thoughts feel undeniably powerful, don't they? They feel like the absolute truth. But the poem counters this by stating, unequivocally, that they are actually false images. And honestly, this is a massive psychological and spiritual insight in our explainer today. Our anxieties might feel overwhelmingly strong, but at the end of the day, they are ultimately based on illusions. They manipulate us with vicious falsehoods. Recognizing that the terror is actually a lie, well, that's the very first step to dismantling it. Before we get to the victory, though, the poem takes us down to the absolute lowest, darkest point of this internal descent. And the imagery here becomes deeply, deeply terrifying. The text describes these manipulative forces as feeding on darkness and gloom. And then he gives us this striking mythological and theological image. They call the metaphorical dragon their mother. This represents the absolute root of evil and despair. The mind is entirely enveloped by these forces, just watching them draw their strength from the deepest, oldest forms of spiritual darkness. So the crucial point is right here. This is exactly where the poem pivots from a thriller into an incredible story of triumph. And the turning point isn't some magical spell, it's self-awareness. The poem says, "When I become aware of the dragon, I will understand the fallen nature." Now, fallen nature is a core theological concept. It's essentially the inherent human susceptibility to darkness, sin, and struggle. By recognizing the dragon for what it is and understanding his own vulnerability as a human being, the author completely strips the darkness of its manipulative power. It's like naming the beast is exactly how you defeat it. And with that sudden self-awareness, the chaotic internal storm finally begins to break. The author makes this conscious, triumphant choice. He declares, "I do not want the demon's ruin." I love that. After all the raging, the breaking, the trampling, the human will reasserts itself. It's a total refusal to be broken. The illusions have been exposed, the nature of the attack is understood, and the author actively rejects the chaotic destruction that the darkness was trying to achieve. And this brilliantly illustrates the magnificent climax of the poem. That jagged, suffocating darkness we felt at the beginning, it is completely gone. In its place is a radiant, smooth, and incredibly warm sanctuary. The light is a warm home. It's just such a simple, beautiful phrase after the brutal psychothriller we literally just survived alongside the author. Here, the light isn't just some abstract concept. It is a true refuge. It is safety, warmth, and peace. It's the ultimate spiritual destination after surviving the warfare of the mind. So through Milan Sofronić's words, we've essentially traced a complete internal hero's journey. We started out in this suffocating chaos, being manipulated by false images and raging darkness. But through the theological and psychological recognition of our own vulnerable nature, we watched the entire narrative shift. Our ultimate takeaway from this explainer is that the ascent from anxiety to safety, from a terrifying psychothriller to a warm home in the light, is a profoundly universal victory. It requires awareness, a stubborn refusal to break, and a deliberate, conscious step toward the light. You know, the darkness described in this poem is something literally every human being encounters in their own way at some point. Whether it's daily anxiety, negative self-talk, or a much deeper spiritual battle, the forces that try to tear down our inner light are always kind of lurking. But as we've seen today, they rely entirely on false images. So I want to leave you with this to reflect on. How do you navigate your own internal psychothrillers? When the manipulative thoughts rage, how do you expose them as falsehoods? And most importantly, where do you go to find your warm home in the light? Keep seeking that sanctuary.